Hello. Some stories were never meant to be told, but tonight, one of them will find you, whispered from the shadows, wrapped in guilt, drenched in silence. Tonight, I'll tell you the story of the margin. I wasn't supposed to be there that night. That's the part that eats at me most. If the train hadn't been delayed, if I hadn't taken that shortcut through the hills to save time, maybe none of it would have happened. But life doesn't care about what should have been. It just keeps moving, dragging you along, whether you're ready or not. My name is Nathan Cole. I work in private data recovery, mostly boring stuff, tracking down wiped hard drives for lawyers or companies too lazy to maintain backups. But every now and then, I get pulled into something strange, things that don't make sense. This was one of them. It started with a job offer that came in with no name, just an email address that disappeared 2 hours after I replied. It told me to go to a remote town up north, near a place called Grey Hollow. The message said there was a building, long abandoned, holding a locked server room deep underground. My task was simple: access the system, recover the files, and send them to the address that would be provided upon completion. No other details. No name. No dame. Payment up front. 10,000 wired to my account without even asking for ID. I've done riskier jobs for less. By the time I arrived in Grey Hollow, it was already past midnight. The town was silent in a way that cities never are. No wind, no cars, no hum of electricity. Just that heavy stillness that presses against your skin and tells you something isn't quite right. The building was easy enough to find. Old concrete, overgrown with moss and rusted steel beams jutting out like broken bones. It didn't look like a server facility, more like a bunker built for a war that never came. The front door wasn't locked, just slightly open, like it had been waiting. I stepped inside with only a flashlight, a tablet, and the encrypted drive they mailed me in advance. The air was colder than it should have been. Not freezing, but still unnatural. Dry, hollow, like a space that had been sealed for far too long. The interior was gutted, walls stripped to metal framework, wires hanging like vines from the ceiling. No sound but the echo of my own footsteps. I followed the layout I'd been sent, down a corridor, through a security gate that had been ripped off its hinges, and into a stairwell that led 3 levels underground. That's when things started to shift. It's hard to explain, but I swear the deeper I went, the more the pressure in the air changed. Not in a physical sense, no increase in altitude or lack of oxygen. It was psychological, like I was being compressed from the inside out. My thoughts got slower, my heartbeat louder. The flashlight flickered, not because of low battery, but like it was being interfered with. There was a tone, barely audible, low, constant, almost like a hum of a machine you can feel in your teeth, more than hear with your ears. I reached the bottom level, found the server room just as the file had described. Heavy door, manual lock, already unsealed. Inside, racks of dead machines, all but one still running. It pulsed with a dim blue light. Silent fans spinning despite the dust covering everything else. I connected the drive. The screen lit up without prompt. Lines of code began scrolling. Then, a message appeared. Hello, Nathan. I didn't type anything. You are not supposed to be here. I pulled my hands away from the keyboard. This wasn't some automated sequence. Someone, or something, was interacting in real time. But I wasn't connected to any network. No signal, no ports, just a direct data feed into an isolated system. Another message appeared. Do you want the truth? I didn't answer. I backed up toward the door, but it had closed. Not slammed, not locked, just gently pushed shut behind me. Quiet. Gauti. Intentional. The hum grew louder. I reached for my flashlight. It flickered once, then went out. Pitch black. I stood still, barely breathing, trying to convince myself I was still in control, that I could turn around, force the door open, get back to the surface, and forget any of this happened. That's when the screen turned back on. No power cord, no backup generator, just words glowing in the dark. They're coming. How? And then the hum stopped. But something else started. Footsteps from behind the racks. Slow, doom, measured, not echoing like mine had. Something was down there with me, and it knew my name. I couldn't see it at first, just the sound. Soft steps, like bare feet on concrete. It wasn't rushing. Whatever it was taking its time. I held my breath, pressed my back against the door, and listened. My hand was already reaching for the emergency flashlight clipped to my belt. The second I turned it on, I swept the light across the room. Nothing. Just metal, dust, the humming server, and shadows that didn't move the way they should. The message on the screen was still glowing. One line, repeating now. They're coming, over and over again, like it was stuck, or like it wanted me to understand. I finally forced the door open. Wasn't locked, just heavy, and rushed back up the stairs 2 steps at a time. I didn't even think about what I was leaving behind. I just wanted out, but the building had changed. I swear to you. I know it sounds crazy, but the layout wasn't the same. Where the stairwell used to open into the corridor, I found another wall. No exits, just more metal, more wires, and more of that vibrating hum. Like the whole structure was alive. The only light came from my flashlight, and that was starting to dim again. I turned back, ready to go back down, maybe try another way out. But the stairs were gone. Just a blank wall where the entrance had been. Concrete, cold, smooth, no sign there had ever been a passage there. My hand shook as I touched it. This wasn't a trick. This wasn't my mind playing games. The building was reacting, adapting. I heard another sound then, a voice, very faint, like a whisper right beside my ear, even though there was no one near me. Nathon. It didn't sound angry. It sounded curious. And it wasn't the voice of a man. It wasn't even fully human. It had that smooth mechanical echo that reminded me of bad voice modulators, except it wasn't artificial. It felt real, ancient. Like it had learned how to speak just by listening to people for too long. I kept moving. I didn't care where I was anymore. I just needed to find anything that resembled a way out. A panel, a vent, a break in the walls. But every direction I turned, the rooms stretched on endlessly, like a maze being built around me, one silent corner at a time. That's when I realized something else. I wasn't the first one there. On the floor of one of the rooms, I found an old backpack, covered in dust, half-zipped. Inside, a cracked phone, a notebook, a plastic ID card with the name Elisa Reeve, and a dried-out pen. The notebook had only 2 pages written on. The rest was torn out. The first page said, "It watches from the wires. Don't let it hear your real thoughts." The second, "It's not a building. It's a memory pretending to be one." That's when the lights came on. Not mine, the overhead ones. Soft, flickering yellow, stretching out into the hallway, that hadn't existed 5 seconds earlier. I followed it, not because I trusted it, but because I had no other choice. And at the end of the corridor, I found a door. Not a metal one. Wood. Old, chipped, with a brass handle that felt too warm when I touched it. I opened it, and I wasn't in the building anymore. I was standing in my old childhood bedroom. Same posters, same books, same scratch on the floor by the bed where I once dropped a knife carving my initials into the wood. It was perfect, but I hadn't lived there in 25 years. And that house, it had burned down when I was 16. I stepped back, heart slamming in my chest, and the door shut behind me. The hum returned, louder, closer. Something whispered again, not a voice this time. A thought that wasn't mine. You're part of it now. I stood in that room for what felt like hours, but I knew it couldn't have been more than minutes. The air was too still, the light too perfect. There were no shadows, none at all. Every corner was lit, but there was no source. Just ambient brightness, like the idea of light rather than actual illumination. I picked up a book from the shelf. It had no title, just blank pages that dissolved into static when I tried to focus on the words. The smell was off too. Close, but not right. Like someone had tried to recreate a memory using second-hand references. I whispered to myself, just to hear something human. My own voice echoed back slower, warped. I tried the door again. Gone. Not locked. Gone. Just a flat wall now. Wood-textured wallpaper where a handle used to be. That's when the noise started again. Not the hum this time. A crackling, like fire. Not loud. Controlled. Focused. Ew. Coming from under the bed. I dropped to the floor and saw a faint orange light. Reaching in felt like a mistake, but I had no choice. My hand brushed something hard and smooth. A box. I pulled it out. It was a black metal case with my name etched into the top. Same font as the message in the server room. Same glow. Faint and cold. I opened it. Inside, a folded piece of paper and an old audio cassette. The paper said one thing: play this where the signal is weakest. I didn't have a cassette player, and the idea of walking around with a message I couldn't hear twisted my stomach. But I stuffed it into my backpack and turned around, and suddenly the wall behind me had changed again. A corridor. Dark. Real this time. Rusty metal, blinking red lights, and that overwhelming stench of mold and wet concrete. I stepped through. The temperature dropped instantly. My breath fogged in front of me, and I started to feel that pressure again, like something was pressing on the inside of my skull. Not pain, just density. Al-Suti, like my thoughts were trying to swim through syrup. The hallway stretched endlessly, but I walked. I didn't think. Thinking here seemed to trigger things. Memories, reactions, traps. After what felt like miles, I saw a figure at the far end, just standing, no movement, facing me, dressed like a technician. Gray suit, gloves, helmet covering the entire face. I stopped walking. It didn't move. I shouted, "Nothing." So, I walked toward it, slowly, one step at a time, heart pounding. The closer I got, the more the air shifted. It smelled like burnt wires and something older, like dry rot and formaldehyde. When I was 10 feet away, the figure raised its arm and pointed to the side. No words, Just that slow, deliberate gesture. I turned. There it was. If that story found a place in your mind, imagine what the next one will do.